Masal Khair. Sisters and brothers, dear friends, and all who have come together tonight, those who grieve and those who hope, thank you for this invitation and honor of sharing a few words with you here. We gather today to remember, and in remembering to reaffirm our commitment to those who have been displaced, to each other, to our children, and to humanity. The word Nakba describes the destruction of over 500 Palestinian villages and the expulsion of more than 700,000 people from their homes. But to speak of the Nakba only in the past tense would be to misunderstand it. For so many, the Nakba is an open wound that continues. In Gaza these past years and in the West Bank as we sit here tonight. In places like Ras al-Awja, Kirbet, Zanuta, Al Khair, Masafar Yatta, Kusra, and so many more, a second Nakba. Fadwa Tukan, the great Palestinian writer, understood that Sumud lives in the body and returns to the earth. Enough for me to die on her earth, be buried in her, to melt and vanish into her soil, then sprout forth as a flower played with by a child from my country. There is no defeat in these lines. There is only continuity. The self dissolves into the land and rises again. The child plays. Life insists on itself. Sumud in humanity calls us to stand steadfast from all around the world and throughout history, all who have been displaced. Each people's suffering is its own, rooted in its own history, its own land, its own loss, yet it does not diminish the importance of the particular by acknowledging the larger picture. Rather, by recognizing our shared suffering, we reclaim the deepest truth, our shared humanity. More than 11 million people in Sudan have been displaced by civil war. In the Arabic of Sudan, there's the concept of sabra, patient endurance, the refusal to be broken by suffering. It is Sumud's cousin, born of the same human necessity, that when the world takes everything from you, you must find the thing that it cannot take. Less than a decade ago, Myanmar militia razed hundreds of Rohingya villages, killing more than 30,000 people and forcing 700,000 to flee. Words have power, and we need to name the violence. The word pogrom comes from the Russian meaning to destroy, to wreak havoc, to demolish violently. It entered history as a name for what was done to Jewish communities across Europe, taking the lives of more than 200,000, leaving 500,000 homeless and fleeing their countries. Many years ago, I brought my parents to visit their family's ancestral home from which they had been displaced. The home no longer stood, replaced by someone else. I gathered stones from their land to bring to my grandparents' graves half a world away, reconnecting their memory to a place they once called home but were forced to leave or were killed. Displacement, like so many Palestinians, lives in my bones too. The Armenians called it Aget, the catastrophe. The native peoples of the America called it the Trail of Tears. While almost 90% of their populations were erased, they practiced Sumud. They hid their ceremonies. They passed their languages to their children in whispers. They kept the seeds. They kept the stories. The Nakba, Aget, pogroms, Trail of Tears. Displacement is a global wound that remains open. Sumud is the response that says we are still in the human community. We were never outside it. As we expand our compassion beyond humanity, we also grieve for the Nakba of nature and what sustains us. The intentional destruction of thousands of olive trees that have been our ancient witnesses and symbols of Sumud themselves, as well as the killing of animals and the destruction of agricultural lands, all to drive people from their homes. We grieve for the loss of all life and of our very humanity and connection with the natural world that sustains us and gives us life. Sameh al-Qasim, a Palestinian writer, wrote from inside prison, "From the narrow window of my small cell, I can see your big cell." In saying this, he recognized a deeper truth. He understood that the jailer is also imprisoned by hatred, by fear, by the machinery of violence they have chosen to serve. It is a profoundly human observation, and it points towards something essential. If we are to talk about Samud for humanity, we must recognize the suffering of both the oppressed and the oppressor. And it is this seemingly radical idea that is at the core of the work of Combatants for Peace. One of the founders of Combatants for Peace, my dear friend and brother Suleiman Khatib, has said our land does not belong to the Jews or the Palestinians alone. We both belong to the land. As he sat in an Israeli prison for more than a decade, his parents brought a new child into this world and named her Samud. When he committed himself to nonviolent resistance, while deep inside an Israeli prison, he recommitted himself to the idea of Samud, not passive endurance, active, transformative steadfastness. He, along with so many other Palestinian members of Combatants, refused to let hatred be the last word of their imprisonment written on their souls. And when their Israeli partners joined them in the occupied West Bank and in the streets of Israel, at a joint memorial ceremony, or here tonight, they acknowledge and they honor the Palestinian experience and history as essential steps towards peace and collective liberation. When unarmed citizen protectors, Israelis and internationals, put their lives on the line to protect Palestinian villages, they practice Samud. They hold that current realities of bereavement and dispossession are the result of human choices, and that different choices can lead to a different future. There is another way. It is not naive to stand together in this way, to stand for another way. It is the most demanding form of courage. Combatants for Peace teaches us that Samud, true Samud, is not only about remaining on the land, it is about remaining human within the machinery designed to strip your humanity away. Mahmoud Darwish wrote that what threatens life is the fear of memory that occupies the occupier, the tyranny that fears a song. Songs are being sung, stories are being told, and children are taught to remember. This is one of the many reasons the Freedom School is so important. To all the young people who have joined Combatants for Peace, Palestinians and Israelis, you are the next generation in line. We are here to support you as you embody Samud for all humanity in your ways. We live in a time when displacement is easier to affect than solidarity, when algorithms amplify some people's grief and silence the rest, when places from Sudan to the West Bank can be dismantled village by village and it barely interrupts our news cycle. Samud for humanity asks something of those of us who are not displaced. It asks us to witness, to hold the names, to refuse to participate in the forgetting, to say simply, and with everything we have, the story is not finished. We all belong to this earth. There is another way. In memory of all who were displaced and did not return, in solidarity with all who are displaced now, in hope for all who will yet find their way home. May we all find our way home, to the land that sustains us, to ourselves, to each other, to the greater humanity, to life, in love, in remembering, and in Samud. Shukran.